when my son-in-law sneered at me across the dinner table and said, "Pay up or get out." I just sat back in my chair and smiled. He thought I was some broke old man living off scraps, desperate for a roof over my head. By the end of that week, though, I sold the house, the very one he believed was his, and suddenly my son was the one begging me for mercy. Because justice? It always comes around. And you won't believe what I did next. Stay with me until the end, and if you believe arrogance should always be humbled, hit that subscribe button right now. I always thought Christmas in Ohio carried a special kind of magic. The kind that made the snow outside glow under the streetlights, and the kind that made your house smell like cinnamon rolls and ham baking in the oven. I worked hard all my life, 35 years at the same manufacturing plant, paid off my mortgage, and made sure my 2 kids, Michael and Sarah, had everything they needed. I wasn't rich, but I was steady. I thought that counted for something in a family. Michael was my oldest. He was always ambitious, maybe too ambitious. From the time he was 10, he'd talk about being the guy in charge. He'd boss Sarah around, make up rules for games, and always wanted the last word. I used to laugh and say, "Well, buddy, maybe one day you'll be running a company." He took it to heart. By the time he hit his 30s, he had a good job in finance, wore tailored suits, and drove a black BMW. He liked to remind me, "Dad, you wouldn't understand the kind of money I'm dealing with." I brushed it off, thinking that's just how sons are when they're trying to prove themselves. Sarah, on the other hand, stayed close to me. She's the type who brings over homemade soup when you've got the flu, or texts you just to say she loves you. She worked as a teacher, not rolling in cash like Michael, but she had this warmth about her. Honestly, she reminded me of her mother. God rest her soul. I'd been widowed for almost 12 years. Losing Linda nearly broke me, but I swore I'd honor her by keeping the family close. Every Christmas, no matter what, I made sure Michael and Sarah came home. I wanted them to feel what Linda used to call the heartbeat of the house. But something felt different last Christmas. Michael arrived late, no gifts, no smile, just his Bluetooth still in his ear like he was running a board meeting. He barely hugged me, tossed his coat on the chair, and said, "Dad, we need to talk business after dinner." That chilled me. Business? On Christmas? I tried to brush it off and focus on Sarah, who was busy helping me set the table. She whispered, "Ignore him, Dad. He's just Michael." But I caught the worry in her eyes. Dinner went by with Michael checking his phone every 2 minutes. He barely touched the ham, didn't laugh at Sarah's stories, and when I offered him another slice of pie, he waved me off like I was some waiter at a restaurant. That's when I felt it, the shift. My son wasn't here for family. He was here for something else. And though I didn't know it then, the very thing he was after would tear open wounds I thought were long healed. Because family, as I would soon learn, meant something very different to Michael than it did to me. The thing about betrayal is, it doesn't hit you all at once. It seeps in slowly, like a crack in the foundation of your house. At first, it's just a hairline fracture. You tell yourself it's nothing, maybe just stress or bad luck. But then you realize, it's not bad luck. It's a wrecking ball aimed straight at your life. That's exactly how it felt the day I realized my husband, Mark, had been running his little side project, except the project was me. It started with paperwork. You'd think betrayal comes with lipstick on a collar or a mysterious text at midnight. Nope. Mine came in the form of a thick manila envelope from Wells Fargo. I had been cleaning the kitchen when I saw the mail. Bills, junk ads, and then one envelope with his name and mine on it. Mortgage papers. But not our mortgage. No, this was a refinance I had never signed, never even heard of. My stomach dropped. I called Mark into the kitchen. "Hey, what's this?" I held the envelope up like it was a dirty rag. He froze. For half a second, I saw panic flash in his eyes. Then he plastered on that fake calm he always used when lying. "Oh babe, that's just some bank error. I'll handle it." But I wasn't stupid. Bank error? It has my name on it, my signature. Except, I didn't sign it. His face tightened. He tried to grab the papers, but I pulled back. That's when my hands started shaking. My own husband had forged my signature. I couldn't breathe. "You stole from me?" I whispered. He laughed, like it was no big deal. "Stole? Don't be dramatic. It's just paperwork. We needed the money, and you're always so uptight about finances. My chest burned. I worked my ass off as a nurse, pulling double shifts, paying half the mortgage, covering groceries. And he was out here stealing my identity? I wanted to throw the papers at his face, but instead I shoved them back into the envelope and ran upstairs. My head was spinning. What else had he touched? My 401k? My savings? That night, I stayed up until 3 a.m., going through our accounts. The numbers didn't add up. Thousands missing. He had drained the joint account, maxed out 2 credit cards in my name, and even taken a loan against his truck. And where did all the money go? A week later, I got my answer. I was leaving the hospital after a long shift when my coworker Susan pulled me aside. Rachel? You might want to check out O'Malley's bar tonight. I frowned. Why? She bit her lip. Because Mark's there. With some girl. And they didn't exactly look like coworkers. I swear, my knees almost buckled. But I drove there anyway. And there he was. Sitting at a booth, beer in hand, laughing like he didn't have a care in the world. Across from him? A blonde, couldn't have been older than 25. She leaned across the table, touching his arm like they'd known each other forever. I felt my throat tighten. My marriage wasn't just cracking, it was shattering. I didn't go in. I couldn't. Instead, I sat in my car and sobbed until my eyes swelled shut. The next morning, I confronted him. He didn't even deny it. What do you expect me to do, Rachel? You're always working, always stressed. I need someone who actually wants to have fun. I thought I was going to throw up. Fun? You mean draining our accounts, forging my signature, and sleeping with a 25-year-old bartender is fun? He smirked. At least she doesn't nag. That's when something inside me snapped. But the injustice didn't stop there. Within a month, I got served papers. Mark was filing for divorce. But he wasn't just leaving. He was going after the house, my retirement fund, and even spousal support. Can you believe that? The man who forged my signature, emptied my accounts, and cheated on me now wanted me to pay him. I remember sitting in my lawyer's office, shaking with rage. How is this even possible? I demanded. My lawyer sighed. Unfortunately, community property laws in this state are tricky. He could argue he contributed to the marriage financially, even if he mismanaged the funds. It felt like my whole world was rigged against me. My credit score was tanked, my savings drained, and now the courts might force me to pay him alimony. I sat there numb. For the first time in my life, I realized, justice doesn't just show up at your door. You have to fight for it. And I wasn't done fighting. Not by a long shot. I thought I had hit rock bottom already, but I was wrong. The real twist came one Friday afternoon, when I was leaving the office. My boss, Daniel, asked me to stop by HR. My heart sank, because usually, when HR calls you in, it's never good news. I walked in, and the HR rep, a woman named Carla, sat across from me with a file open. She looked uncomfortable. Megan, I need to ask you something sensitive. Do you know that your husband has been calling the company? My stomach dropped. What? Why would Ryan be calling here? Carla hesitated. He's been telling people in your department that you're unstable, that you've been mishandling company funds. He even claimed you drained your 401k to gamble. He emailed your boss accusing you of fraud. For a moment, I thought I was going to black out. Fraud? Gambling? Those were nuclear accusations. And worst of all, in corporate America, even an accusation like that could stain your career permanently. I clenched my fists. That's not true. I've never touched a dime of company money. Carla nodded quickly. I believe you. But Daniel has to cover himself, so he's asked me to remind you that any sign of financial misconduct is grounds for immediate termination. You need to be careful. That's when it hit me. Ryan wasn't just trying to hurt me at home. He was trying to sabotage me professionally. If I lost my job, I'd lose my health insurance, my mortgage would fall apart, and he'd have me cornered financially. But here's the twist. While Carla was showing me the file, I noticed something in the emails Ryan sent. He had accidentally attached screenshots of our joint bank account. Screenshots that showed not me, but him, withdrawing thousands of dollars from our savings to gamble online. His own evidence exposed him. I didn't say anything in that HR office. I just nodded, thanked Carla, and left. But inside, a fire lit up. Ryan had slipped up. For the first time in weeks, I had proof that he wasn't just emotionally abusive, he was reckless and self-destructive. That night, I confronted him calmly. I set my phone on the counter, recording, though he didn't realize it. "Ryan, HR told me about the emails you've been sending." His smirk was immediate. "Good. Maybe they'll finally see who you really are. You think you're so perfect, Megan, but I know how to strip that fake mask right off you." I tilted my head. "And you thought sending our bank statements with your gambling withdrawals would help your case?" His face froze. For once, the confidence cracked. "What are you talking about?" I slid my phone closer to him, with the screenshot open. "This, Ryan. These transactions. DraftKings, online casinos, transfers to your buddy Mike. This is your trail, not mine. HR already saw it." His hands twitched, like he wanted to grab the phone. "You don't know what you're talking about." "Oh, I know exactly what I'm talking about," I said. "And so will a judge." He lunged forward, but I stepped back and hit stop on the recording. My heart was racing, but I felt stronger than I had in weeks. For the first time, Ryan realized he had made a mistake, and I was no longer the one cornered. The light twist was clear: he wanted to ruin me, but he'd handed me the rope to hang him with. I thought I knew betrayal. I thought my ex-husband leaving me at 45 for his 20-something assistant was the definition of betrayal. But what I found in that banker's box from my father's basement was something darker, something that made every harsh word from my daughter look like child's play. It started with a folder labeled, "Connie, custody." My mom's name. I hadn't said it out loud in years. She left when I was 9, and Dad never told me much except, "She wasn't fit to raise you." But inside those papers? It was a custody agreement. And not just any agreement. There were motions filed by her lawyer accusing my father of hiding assets, stocks, life insurance policies, even a second mortgage taken out on our house. She claimed he funneled money into an account that he later used to buy rental properties under his brother's name. I froze, my hands shaking so hard the old paper rattled like dry leaves. All these years, Dad played the role of the self-sacrificing single father, the man who gave up everything to raise me. Turns out, he didn't give up much. He took it. And then it hit me: that's why my mother disappeared. Not because she abandoned me, but because she got crushed in court. Dad had money for the best lawyers. She didn't. He won. I sank to the basement floor, the musty smell of mildew filling my nose, tears blurring my vision. My whole childhood had been built on a lie. When I finally stumbled upstairs, I found the second blow waiting in another box. This one was full of unopened letters, addressed to me. From her. From my mom. Birthday cards, Christmas notes, even a high school graduation card with a $50 check still inside, never cashed. Every envelope had the same neat, slanted handwriting: "Love always, Mom." He hid them. My father stole not just her presence but her voice, her love, her attempts to stay connected. He painted her as the villain and himself as the martyr. I couldn't breathe. For a long moment, I just sat there, clutching those letters to my chest like I was 9 again, waiting for a mother who never came. Except she did come. He just locked her out. The irony burned me alive. I had spent months feeling gutted that my daughter Hannah chose her father's narrative over mine. Now I saw the pattern clear as day. I had become my mother. And my father? He had become the template for the man who raised me to tolerate lies. That night, I poured myself a glass of cheap red wine and pulled out my laptop. I started Googling. Custody records. Old real estate filings. Probate law. Everything I could dig up to piece together the truth. Turns out, Dad kept those rental houses all the way up until his death. The properties were worth nearly $900,000 when they sold, according to county tax records. And guess what? That money wasn't listed in the official estate inventory filed with probate court last year. He had hidden wealth even from me. Even in death, he lied. And then, like a sick joke, I stumbled across an obituary notice from 5 years ago. My mother had passed away in Oregon. Alone. No family listed except survived by one daughter. Me. Except I never knew. I dropped my head onto the keyboard, sobbing. She died thinking I didn't care. She died never knowing the truth, that I had never stopped wondering about her. That grief morphed into rage. Not just at my father, but at the entire cycle of deceit I had inherited. And that's when another puzzle piece snapped into place, my ex-husband Mark. He had always admired my father, called him a real man who handled business. Now I understood why. They were cut from the same cloth, men who manipulated, who controlled money, who used silence as a weapon. I realized something chilling. My father's lies didn't just shape my childhood. They shaped my marriage. They shaped Hannah. Because kids absorb patterns. And I had repeated one without even realizing it. I looked around my empty kitchen, half-packed boxes still on the counter from the fight with Hannah, foreclosure notices still tacked to the fridge, and felt this cold clarity settle over me. I wasn't just fighting for a house anymore. I was fighting to break a generational curse. I pulled out one of Mom's unopened letters. Inside was a line that gutted me. One day, you'll be old enough to know the truth. And when you are, I pray you don't let bitterness steal your heart. I cried until my throat was raw. Then I whispered back to her, I know now, Mom. And I won't. But forgiveness didn't mean letting the lies stand. The next morning, I marched down to the courthouse. I requested certified copies of the estate filings, the property transfers, the probate orders. If my father's estate had concealed assets, that meant fraud. And fraud meant I had legal standing to challenge it. It wasn't just about money anymore. It was about clearing my mother's name, reclaiming my voice, and proving to my daughter that truth matters more than appearances. As I walked out of the clerk's office with a stack of stamped papers under my arm, I felt my spine straighten. For the first time in months, maybe years, I wasn't drowning. I was preparing for war. And this time, the lies weren't going to win. I'll never forget the way the courthouse smelled that morning, like old wood polished with lemon oil and years of tired sighs. My palms were sweaty as I sat at the plaintiff's table, staring at the man who had once shared my mortgage, my bed, and my dreams. Now, he was my enemy across the aisle, flanked by his slick attorney in a pinstripe suit. Ethan looked so sure of himself. Like he had already won. He leaned back in his chair, smirking, the same smirk he used to give me when I'd try to argue with him about our finances, or when I'd question why his phone always died after 10 p.m. But I wasn't the same woman he used to gaslight into silence. No. Today, I had receipts, and more importantly, I had courage. The judge called the session to order, her gavel echoing like thunder in my chest. His lawyer opened strong, painting Ethan as the hard-working husband who had sacrificed everything for his fragile wife, who now, supposedly out of bitterness, was trying to rob him of his rightful assets. I bit my tongue so hard it almost bled. Fragile? I'd carried our entire household while he drained our joint account on vacations with another woman. When it was my turn, my attorney, sharp as a whip and calm as a surgeon, stood up. Your Honor, what my client endured wasn't fragility. It was betrayal. And we have documentation proving Mr. Collins hid assets, committed financial fraud, and violated their prenup agreement. I slid the thick binder across the table. Every page was a piece of my heartbreak turned weapon. Bank statements showing cash transfers to accounts in another woman's name. Screenshots of texts he'd accidentally synced to our iCloud. Even the withdrawal slips where he emptied part of my 401k without consent. The judge leaned forward, skimming. Her brow furrowed. Ethan's smirk wavered. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes. Then came the testimony. His so-called mistress, Tina, was subpoenaed. And to my shock, she showed up. Dressed sharp, nails manicured, but her voice shook as she spoke. Yes, Your Honor, she admitted. He told me he was separated. He said the money was his. But when the checks started bouncing, I realized I'd been lied to too. The courtroom murmured. I had to grip the table to keep my knees from buckling. The betrayal had been double-sided. While I'd been the wife holding the mortgage, she'd been the cover story. And now, she was ready to throw him under the bus. Ethan slammed his hand on the table, hissing at his lawyer. But it was too late. My attorney called me to the stand. My voice shook at first, But once I started, the truth flowed like water breaking through a dam. I told them about the years of manipulation, how he'd isolate me from friends, guilt-trip me if I spent $20 on myself, yet never blinked dropping thousands in Vegas. How he'd laugh when I cried over late mortgage payments, telling me I was too emotional to understand money. I looked straight at him when I said, "Fragile?" No. I was surviving. And survival makes you stronger than the person trying to break you. The judge's gavel struck. Order. But her eyes lingered on me with something that looked almost like respect. Then came the reversal moment, the one Ethan never saw coming. While digging through the financial records, my attorney had uncovered something Ethan thought he'd buried, a joint property deed in Texas, purchased under both our names, with my forged signature. He had tried to buy land with my credit as leverage. Fraud. Straight up fraud. The courtroom went silent as the document flashed on the projector. My name, forged in his sloppy attempt at my handwriting. His lawyer paled. Ethan's face drained of color. The judge's voice was cold steel. "Mr. Collins, do you deny this signature?" He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. And just like that, the power dynamic shifted. The predator had been cornered. My attorney leaned close, whispering, "He's done. The fraud charge alone could cost him more than half his assets." I breathed for the first time in months. It felt like oxygen rushing into lungs I hadn't realized were suffocating. But I wasn't finished. I asked the judge for the restraining order, finally saying the words out loud. I detailed the intimidation, the late-night threats, the fear I lived with every time I saw his truck parked outside my workplace after we separated. Ethan tried to scoff, but it was hollow now. Everyone in that room had seen his mask crack. By the time the judge adjourned for deliberation, I knew it wasn't just about money anymore. It was about reclaiming myself. I walked past Ethan as we left the courtroom, heels clicking like victory drums. He leaned in, whispering, "This isn't over." But I finally smiled. Not the brittle smile I used to force. A real one. "No, Ethan," I whispered back. "For you it is." Because the truth? For the first time in years, the scales weren't tipped in his favor. Justice was no longer a distant dream. It was standing right in front of me, dressed in a black robe, holding a gavel. And tomorrow, it was about to fall on him. The next morning felt different. The sunlight streaming through my living room windows wasn't just bright. It felt like permission, a sign that I was finally stepping into a life I'd earned. The courthouse had already delivered its verdict, and I had spent the night replaying the moment Ethan's smug face crumbled as the judge confirmed everything: the deed, the fraudulent transactions, the restraining order. I poured myself a cup of coffee, savoring the aroma like it was a luxury I'd never truly appreciated. And then my phone rang, my son Jake. "Mom, can we talk?" His voice was hesitant, almost trembling. I smiled, knowing this wasn't just a call, it was a reckoning. He came over within an hour, pacing nervously in my kitchen. The boy who had once rolled his eyes at me, who had followed Ethan's every word without question, now stood there with genuine fear in his eyes. "Mom, I didn't know," he started, stumbling over words. I thought Ethan was right about you. About everything. About us. I shouldn't have doubted you." I put down my mug and looked him straight in the eye. "Jake, you didn't know. And now you do. What matters is that you understand the truth, and that we can rebuild from it." He swallowed hard, his shoulders slumping. I want to help. Can I help fix what he did?" For the first time, I felt a sense of empowerment not just in winning against Ethan, but in seeing my family recognize the truth. I nodded. "Yes, but this isn't about revenge anymore. It's about justice and making sure no one else is hurt the way we were." The following weeks were a whirlwind. I worked with my attorney to ensure Ethan's fraudulent activities were fully exposed: credit reports, mortgage adjustments, legal filings. Black Friday, Thanksgiving, even the HWA board meetings became avenues for Ethan's lies to unravel. Every lie, every slight, every humiliation he had piled on me was finally accounted for. And for the first time, I wasn't ashamed of it. I owned it, and I owned my life. Even the neighbors, who had whispered behind fences and at community events, now looked at me differently. Mrs. Whitaker from next door, who had always made subtle digs about my quiet lifestyle, complimented me on my resilience. "It takes a strong woman to survive what you went through," she said, handing me her homemade pumpkin pie. I laughed, realizing just how far I'd come. I also reclaimed the house, not just legally, but emotionally. Walking through rooms that had once felt cold and controlled, I now arranged the furniture for comfort, not convenience. I painted the walls, hung pictures of my travels, and installed a small home office where I could finally pursue consulting work I dreamed about for years. And then there was the moment that truly solidified my empowerment. Ethan tried to show up at my daughter's birthday party, expecting the same timid compliance he'd once commanded. The security team, hired after the restraining order, politely escorted him off the property. Watching him fume from behind the gates, I realized this was closure. Not from anger, but from power regained. I even took steps to help Tina, Ethan's former mistress, who had been manipulated into his schemes. We met over coffee, and I guided her through undoing some of the financial damage he'd caused her. In that moment, justice felt restorative, not just punitive. But perhaps the most profound moment came with Jake. We sat together on the porch one evening, sipping lemonade, watching the sun set over the Texas neighborhood that had once been a battlefield. "Mom," he said softly, "I get it now. You weren't just surviving, you were preparing us for this. For everything." I hugged him tight, feeling the weight of years of frustration and heartbreak lift from my shoulders. "Exactly, Jake. And now we know, we can face anything. Together. Strong, empowered, and honest." By the end, I wasn't just the woman who had been mocked and belittled. I was the owner of my home, my dignity, my finances, and my life. The scales of justice had tipped, not because I wanted revenge, but because I refused to accept injustice. And as I closed the front door that evening, the twilight painting long shadows across the yard, I smiled. This was closure. This was justice. This was empowerment in its purest form. No more fear. No more shame. Only strength, clarity, and the unshakable truth that I was finally, irrevocably, in charge of my life. Sitting on my porch that evening, watching the last streaks of sunlight disappear behind the Texas rooftops, I couldn't help but reflect on everything that had happened. Life has a way of testing us, of pushing us to the edge, and sometimes the people we love, or think we can trust, turn out to be the very ones who doubt or betray us. But what I've learned is that no insult, no mockery, no manipulation can take away your dignity if you claim it for yourself. For years, I let assumptions about my place in the family and the quiet judgments of others define me. I stayed silent, hoping for approval, hoping to be seen as enough. Yet all it took was one bold step to reclaim not just my house, but my voice, my respect, and my sense of self-worth. This story isn't just about property or money, it's about standing up, taking control, and refusing to accept toxic treatment, even from those closest to you. Family matters, yes, but family doesn't have the right to diminish who you are. My son Jake finally understood that love and respect aren't automatic. They are earned and given freely to those who recognize the truth. And to anyone watching, let this be a reminder: empower yourself, protect your boundaries, and never let anyone make you feel small in your own life. Whether it's a partner, in-law, colleague, or friend, your worth is not up for debate. In America, we celebrate independence, self-reliance, and personal accountability. But too often, we forget that protecting those values means defending our dignity and setting boundaries, especially with people we care about. Life will throw arrogance, betrayal, and humiliation your way, but the power to respond wisely, and to thrive, is always in your hands. So to anyone who feels belittled or unseen, reclaim your voice, stand firm, and never let anyone dictate your worth. The house, the money, or the status can all be temporary, but your courage and integrity define you forever. As I locked the front door that evening, a simple truth resonated deeply: you don't wait for respect, you command it. And those who mock you will only remember your strength. Remember, justice isn't revenge, it's owning your life, protecting your heart, and teaching the world not to underestimate you. If you've ever felt overlooked, betrayed, or underestimated, hit that subscribe button. Follow this channel for more stories where power, justice, and empowerment rewrite the ending. You won't want to miss the next twist. They mocked the tenant, but I built the empire they never saw coming.